Here we're still using similar triangles, now doing some finding indirect measurements. And on this one we are given that we have our two similar triangles, GCD and GEF, and we're finding segment J based on the given information. Now, as I do something like this, one thing I'm going to look at, I want to pay attention to the way this is written. Remember, lines up our corresponding parts and it gives us our congruent angles. And so I know just by the way this is written that angle C and angle E are congruent to each other. Here's angle E, here's angle C. They are going to be congruent. The reason I want to pay attention to that is, remember, we've said before, opposite of congruent angles are corresponding sides. So that means that the 5 here corresponds to the 10 on this triangle. We also have our vertical angles that we know are congruent, which then is also lining up corresponding sides. The 4 corresponds to the J. So when I set up my proportion, I need to make sure I'm setting it up to where I'm paying attention to those corresponding sides. And remember, there's lots of ways to set up proportions. So if I say 5 is to 4, as, remember what corresponds to the 5 is 10. And what corresponds to the 4 is J. Now, there's other ways I could have set up this proportion. I just need to make sure that as I set this up, I'm lining up corresponding sides. For example, some of you may have said, well, I want to go 5 over 10 and line these two corresponding parts up. That's fine. 5 over 10 would be equal to 4 over J. I can set this up either way. Notice when I cross multiply on both of these, I end up in the same spot. I'm going to have 5 times J is equal to 4 times 10. Then I'm dividing both sides by 5. And so I have 40 divided by 5 tells me that J is equal to 8 meters. In our next example, Whitney wants to know the height of an ash tree. She measures the shadow of the tree and finds it's 15 yards long. She also knows that a nearby monument is 32 yards tall and it's casting a shadow of 60 yards. So how tall is the tree? So we should be drawing ourselves a picture. I'm going to draw a tree and I'm going to draw a monument. And then I'm going to label everything that I know. So I know that, I know, wrong picture. I know that the tree has a shadow of 15 yards and the monument is 32 yards tall and has a shadow of 60. So here's the tree. We're looking for the tree's height. We know the shadow's 15, and then we have the monument is 32 yards tall. We know it has a shadow of 60. Now, when we're talking about shadows, remember they're coming from the sun way up over here, and so our angle here is going to be the same. Also, our angle on this side is going to be the same. So we have these similar triangles by angle. And so when we set up our proportion, we would know that the tree would be corresponding to the monument, because we're talking about how tall those are. And our shadow of the tree would correspond to the shadow of the monument. So again, when I'm setting up my proportion, I want to pay attention to those corresponding parts. So I could have the height of the tree corresponds to the height of the monument is equal to, since I put the tree on top on this side, I'm going to put the tree's shadow on top on this side. 15 corresponds to 60. Now, if I want to work with smaller numbers, I could reduce this before I do my multiplying. 15 goes into both of these numbers. 15 goes into itself once and into 64 times. So I could reduce that before I multiply. So now it's going to be 4 times t is equal to 32 times 1. Divide both sides by 4, and we find that that tree is going to be 8 yards tall.